All right, talking Nets, down 2-0 in the series. Robin Lundberg, Hudson Flynn. We'll see if Keith McPherson can get away from daddy duty. He's got a baby and a cat to tend to at the moment. The former probably a little bit more difficult to deal with than the latter. Nevertheless, the Nets, with a difficult task in front of them, hit the music, Alex.
We're doing that Brooklyn Nets talk right here on Talking Nets. Brooklyn, we go hard. We go hard. Talking Nets. Hosted by Keith McPherson, Robin Lundberg, and Hudson Flynn.
Robin Lundberg, Hudson Flynn here with you today. Keith McPherson, a new father, brand new father. Congratulations to he and his wife. He may be able to pop in here, but we're going to hold down the fort for now. For Jared Williams and anybody else in the chat who's asking about it, Jared Williams says, last night's game was frustrating to watch. And Hudson, when it's usually a really bad thing when your parents say to you, like, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. But in this case, like, I'm flipping that because I'm not mad at the team's effort. Like, they played hard. It's not for a lack of competing out there. I'm a little disappointed they didn't win the game last night because that was a winnable game. They held the Sixers under 100 points. There were a couple things that really went against them. The shot clock violation that wasn't called, a non-call on a travel. But really, I think it came down to them missing open looks from three, and that was the difference in the game. So I'm disappointed that this series isn't 1-1 because that was a chance to steal a game, but I'm not mad at the way the Nets have represented themselves.
Yeah, I think game 2 was a really good response from game 1, where, I mean, it's fair to say that in game 1, the Nets did get their doors blown off, right? They were pulling out their starters with 4 minutes left in the game. Not a great look, right? But to respond with not only the continued ability to contain, I won't say shut down, Joel Embiid to the extent that you can, and to make the other players on the Sixers beat them, I've been content with that. And I've said on Twitter, and I will keep saying, that the Nets game plan isn't not working. It's not the game plan that's failing, particularly in this last game. That game was a game that the Nets could have and probably should have in some cases won. And I think I'm going to throw it to Keith, who is fresh off daddy duty and is ready to contribute.
Yo, let's not get swept. I watched the game last night, the first game. I was watching in the hospital, which was not ideal. The sound was coming out of this like little remote attached to the bed. Let's not get swept. Last night I thought we had them first half, and then second half Doc Rivers tightened them up, and they tightened up. They're the better team, obviously. Mm-hmm. They're favored to sweep. They're favored to win the series, but let's not get swept. They say the series doesn't start until the home team loses a game, and if you look around the rest of the series, and a lot of series have started, but they handle business in Philly. Now they got to come to Brooklyn, and this Nets world has been built. There'll be plenty Nets fans in attendance. I'm sad that I can't go. I really am, and I'm glad that you guys are holding it down. I really don't have too much time. I just wanted to pop in and, at least give an update on me. I'm good. Baby's good, healthy. Wife is healthy. It's just she had the C-section, so she's recovering, and I think that's important for people to know, especially like this is my first time. I know Robin is experienced with this. I didn't exactly know what I was walking into, but it's a lot more on the dad, on the father to shoulder, because your wife is hurt or the mother is hurt, right? Like, but I've taken it full speed ahead. I've taken it full on, and I'm enjoying the experience. It's just different. Like, once you have a kid, and once you see that baby that's depending on you and looking at you and needs you, it's like nothing else matters besides keeping this baby alive and healthy and happy. So, even with some of the other sports and stuff going on, you can't watch a game when you got to watch a kid. It's like you got to literally keep your eyes on the baby. And it's kind of tough to keep it. Like, it was definitely hard to watch a 1:00 Saturday game in the hospital. So that game, I mean, I saw Mikal Bridges cooking a little bit, but then I had some other things to do. And then last night, we had it going. Some adjustments were made. Obviously, Embiid was slowed down. Harden was slowed down. But, in the second half. They're the better team. Don't get swept. But I just wanted to pop in, fellas. I'll let you guys host the show. Shout out to everybody that pulls up and supports Talking Nets. Everybody in the chat, man. You know what I was just thinking. I just told my wife, like I was like watching the baby and watching my cat. I'm like, hey, can you like just sit here for a couple minutes? Like I care about Talking Nets. And as you guys know, I did every episode on my own last season. With no help. There's no way I would have been able to have a kid last season and keep this going, but we're blessed. Everybody's healthy. And shout out to Robin and Hudson for being so solid all season and, carrying the weight for me the rest of the way through. Our world, Nets world. Shout out to all the Nets fans in the chat, and shout out to these two for holding down the pod. Alex as well. Appreciate you guys. I'm not going to mess up what you guys got going. I just wanted to pop in while I could. Robin will, I'm sure, carry the rest of the way. I know Hudson will too, and Robin can speak to. He's got 3 kids of his own, and this is my first. I don't plan on only having one, but I'm 5 days in, and I'm learning a lot. I'm experiencing a lot, and my wife needs me, and my baby needs me, and man, I just realized nothing else is as important.
Yeah, what's the phrase? Puts things into perspective. A few things real quick. A C-section is actually a real major surgery. So of course, hope the recovery goes well. 2, don't worry so much. You always worry so much with the first one, and then you realize these things are basically indestructible. It's always going to be okay. And then, when they get, personally for me as a dad, I say this all the time, but when they get to like 6 months for a dad, for me, that's when it even gets better. 6 months and on every day, because that's when they're, develop the personalities and the attachment to daddy. Obviously, You've been helping out a lot, but mommy is the life sustenance force, at this point in time. But as far as the Nets Sixers go, you're right on the money. The Sixers are a better team. And the Nets have no margin for error. And one of the big stretches in that game, I thought was at the end of the first half, where Bridges gets fouled. He goes to the free throw line, misses both free throws. And instead of the Nets, being up, they would have been up 9, I believe, at that point. They wound up 5 at the half, a little bit less of a cushion. And that's when I started to think that the Sixers were probably going to take the game. But, Bridges did not shoot the ball well. It's going to be tough for them to win a game when he doesn't shoot the ball well, particularly when Nick Claxton and Spencer Dinwiddie have been garbage in this series. I don't even notice that Nick Claxton is playing, and the Nets are better off going.
He's barely playing, actually, at this point.
Well, because he shouldn't.
Took him out the rotation.
They should go small, spread the floor like they did with DFS at center. I think that's their best chance. And then Dinwiddie just hasn't been good enough either, which brings up, as we talk about this series, I think one natural place for Nets fans to go is the future as well. And the biggest glaring need to me for this team is a scoring guard or a dynamic playmaking player of some kind, somebody that can get into the paint, put pressure on the rim, kick it out, spray it out to the shooters, hit the little floaters. And fortunately enough, it seems as if the likes of Trae Young and Damian Lillard could be available this summer, who do fit this current iteration of the Nets team. I'm not saying they have to go that way or mortgage all their assets, but when you look at Bridges and Johnson and their ages, they're not old, but they're not young enough where you want to wait 3 years for draft picks to develop. They're 26 years old, I believe. And those to me are the foundational guys at this point. Cam Johnson continues to impress. Those are the 2 I want to keep under any circumstances and build around. And I think if you can get one more guy of their caliber who's a ball handler, and attacking dynamic playmaker who can score, then I think the Nets are in serious business.
Yeah, Cam Thomas, you're a Portland Trailblazer next season. I see it. I see the vision. But yeah, you're right. And I think part of the issue too has been just some serious inconsistency. The Nets, outside of Cam Johnson in that last game, shot 30% from the field, which the Nets were the 5th best 3-point shooting team in the league, and they weren't too much worse shooting from 2, thanks to Nick Claxton being able to be a competent and functional player when not playing against Joel Embiid. And so the Nets are in a situation where the game plan is working and they're getting players into good positions to hit good shots. They're just not hitting them. And we have seen a glaring lack of the ability to have an independent creator who can generate points on their own as kind of a guarantee. I think that's something that we just don't have, and Mikal Bridges will develop over time. And it seems Cam Johnson has shown flashes, but we just don't have that right now. And when you're in a situation where you're defending small ball, but with all wings, you're in a situation where you're playing with so many role players that you have to rely on one or two players, in this case, Mikal Bridges or Cam Johnson, to create and to score. But if I'm looking at the most glaring weakness from the last game, aside from our shot making, it was the stretches where we played Dinwiddie iso ball. Dinwiddie iso ball just, quite frankly, did not work. It was so infuriating to watch us waste and dribble out 10 seconds of every shot clock to work Spencer Dinwiddie into a drive, which did lead to kickouts to open shooters, but it just felt like it slowed the game down too much, and that plays into the Sixers' hands. And we saw that the Nets were at their best when they were able to run and hit shots in open transition. And I think we lose that when you have Spencer Dinwiddie, who seems to be someone who likes the glory, likes the spotlight on him, likes to try and take those shots, hoping that he'll hit them. But in the regular season, we saw the Nets had their most success when Spencer Dinwiddie was a good passer, when he was facilitating, when he was, leading the league in assists. But if he's going to be a ball dominant player who doesn't swing the ball and who can't hit shots, and also, just like Mikal Bridges in the first half, bricked back-to-back free throws, we're not going to have success, because the recipe for success was what we saw in the first half, and that was just pure unselfish basketball combined with shot making.
Well, yeah, Spencer Dinwiddie misses way too many free throws to complain as much as he does. He complains, and then he finally gets there and he doesn't make it. Rahola88, though, writes in the chat, Dinwiddie not really a point guard. And I think that's part of the problem. He's just miscast. To me, Dinwiddie is a combo guard off the bench. Maybe, he's good enough to be a spot starter. He's actually played pretty well for the Nets since he got here. He's just not good enough at a few of those things. One, he doesn't seem to want to take it right to Embiid when Embiid is in the drop coverage, taking it to the rack. Two, he doesn't really have much of a mid-range floater game. Three, his lobs haven't been working. And then four, he's just not shooting the ball that well. He has one of those games where he shoots the ball well. The Nets very well could win that game. And I think that's kind of what we're hoping for now, right? One win. Let's do better than last season. Get one win. I'm going to game 3 with my son on Thursday. I hope it is that game. As far as Jacques Vaughn goes, he's done a good job. I mean, the Sixers didn't even score 100 points in the game. That's an impressive, job by the Nets defense. There are possible things he could try. Like, you could try Cam Thomas. I'm not against trying Cam Thomas, given his ability to score, but we've seen why Thomas isn't a part of the rotation regularly. But, desperate times call for desperate measures. You don't have anything to lose. I wouldn't mind it if he dusted off Cam Thomas. I've been advocating for Edmund Sumner for a long time, just for the defense and the speed that he brings to the table that other guys don't. Maybe Yuta in place of Joe Harris, those kind of tweaks. But the roster simply isn't there. This was a team that was thrown together at midseason. And I think the silver lining is that the Suns trade looks like a really good trade to set them up going forward. They have the draft assets to make further moves, either whether that's by selecting players or going for the Trae Young, Damian Lillard style deals. They've got guys who are only going to get better, I believe, as they get more reps with these opportunities. Mikal Bridges to learn how to deal with double teams, to expand his game as a playmaker. Cam Johnson to learn how to score off the dribble and become a threat beyond, a pull-up jump shooter and a three-point shooter. The Twins as building blocks. But as far as the series goes, it ultimately comes down to the talent deficit. The game in game 2 came down to them missing threes. The series overall is coming down to the Sixers having a better team. And you can only get so mad about that.
Yeah, and look, we said going into it that our plan was going to be stop Joel Embiid, and we will live with whatever happens next. And the reality of the situation is that the secondary players who are hitting shots for the Philadelphia 76ers are better than the secondary players on the Nets, and the secondary players in the Nets are also exhausted from having to double arguably the best player in the league. It's unfortunate too, because watching this Sixers team play in the way that they're handling Joel Embiid, it was kind of similar to the vision for those Nets teams with the superstars, right? Where you needed secondary players to hit shots when teams keyed in on the stars. And the Sixers are proving that they can. PJ Tucker remains a really good winning player. Tyrese Maxey has been absolutely unreal, lights out. And the Sixers are just hitting more shots. I don't think that means that the Nets can't win a game. I'd love to see them win one game in Brooklyn just to show some improvement over last season. But when you're looking at this series from a bigger picture, I can't see and I can't possibly understand how the takeaway for so many Nets fans that I've seen and listening to spaces and looking on Twitter and all that stuff is that Jacques Vaughn is somehow to blame and that Jacques Vaughn is not making, winning decisions when it comes to coaching. And I think that's just such an interesting take because Jacques Vaughn has made decisions. He's made big decisions. The amount that he has reduced Nick Claxton's role has been a massive, massive decision that we saw benefited the Nets greatly in the last game. Nick Claxton is a player that up until recently played just about every minute he could for the Brooklyn Nets. And he completely eliminated him from the rotation in a matchup that Nick Claxton was, billed as the one player that we had that could maybe, do the most to contribute to stopping Joel Embiid. But he's just too small. He's just too thin. And he's not standing his ground and he's getting run through. And that's not on him necessarily because Joel Embiid is that good. But
it shows limitations, right?
It shows limitations.
It shows
right?
limitations.
It shows that he's not a complete defensive powerhouse. And on the same night that we see the defensive player of the year final rankings come out and Nick Claxton finishes 10th, I was upset with that placement, but it's hard not for the NBA and for the voters to not feel vindicated seeing the way he's getting bullied by a player that it's clear is better at, it's just more important to double him up with players who can get out to shooters because Nick Claxton, unfortunately, and this is, I think, the first time I've ever said this, is a little bit limited by his relative lack of mobility in this situation.
Well, and he's a limited offensive player too. I mean, look, he's a good player. He can get better. He's still very young, but he's not untouchable in my mind. I mean, like when you talk about Cam Thomas and Nick Claxton, to me, those are the two pieces you would be attaching along with salary and along with draft picks to try and make the big splashy move if that's the way that the Nets do choose to go. Because I do think this team, I'm not big into championship or bust mentality because I think that leaves you disappointed. I mean, every team but the one is disappointed. And there's a lot to be said for winning, more games than you lose every year, going to the playoffs, winning a round, winning 2 rounds, and having that happen over a period of 5 years. And as Gabriel Vaccaro writes in, Trae Young would be perfect. Somebody like that you plug into this team with another tweak, another couple of roster tweaks, maybe a physical presence, whatever the case may be. And all of a sudden, I think you're looking at a clear second round team kind of floor, and that's where they would be playing with and the kind of team that gets right back in the mix into relevancy. Right now, you have a hard playing team, a team that plays with pride, a team with likable guys, and a team with some players that you feel good about building around in Bridges and Johnson. But you clearly don't have a contending team. And we knew that going in to the series. So I'm not sure what else there is to be taken away. I mean, you give some credit to Philly. Tyrese Maxey scares me more than James Harden. I would have said that before the series started as well. I mean, that's a really good roster when Maxey is arguably your third best player. And you could make the case, on many nights, the second best player. PJ Tucker scared me more than any player on the team going into the series just because he's relentless going for loose balls. And that's where the Nets have gotten killed all year. Second chance opportunities, even if he's, allowed to have the ball in his hands after the shot clock, which was a tough thing to take. So you hope the home cooking helps stuff like that. You hope there's that one game where the threes really drop, the Sixers make some turnovers and the Nets can win a game and you can feel good about it and go building from there. But I think the status hasn't really changed from the end of the season, Hudson. It's kind of, all right, we knew what we had. We knew we now have the potential to go get more. The worst is behind us in the rear view. And you just want to get through this series acquitting yourself well.
Yeah. And the truth of it is, if you want to be a contending team, you need to have a springboard team before then, right? The superstar era, Big Three era Nets needed that 17-18 team to jumpstart Brooklyn as a destination, right? For that players wanted to go and to build a culture, right? So there is nothing overly negative to be upset about with the way this series has gone. I mean, it's gone as the odds makers and as the spread has kind of dictated and everyone sort of expected. But when you watch these games, it's really unfortunate, especially with last game. I don't want to feel like the Nets are being put in a situation where we can't be only blaming ourselves for the loss. I want to blame the Nets for that loss. I want to give them 100% responsibility. But when you watch a game with the amount of reffing mistakes and reffing decisions from the shot clock all the way down to the way that the refs have called and will continue to call Joel Embiid and his flopping, all of that stuff, I think it just detracts from my experience as a fan, because I want to be able to say that it was just basketball. That's why the Nets lost last night. But if you're a Nets team that's losing by smaller margins, it's hard not to look at those refereeing decisions and think that, man, if those decisions had gone in a different direction, things would be different. But, at the end of the day, it's not going to change anytime soon. So all we are is, shouting into the ether.
Well, it might have been different in that game. I don't know if it would be different for the series, but I feel you. I feel the frustration. I ultimately think still the biggest difference in that game wasn't those few missed calls as much as the missed threes, but those were big miss. I mean, the shot clock violation was a huge swing in the game. D-Rock, you just saw the chat on the screen with a premium chat. No rebounds, no rings, small ball gimmicks fail. I disagree with that to a certain extent. I mean, the Warriors have played small ball. They've been a dynasty playing small ball with Draymond Green at center. You can rebound playing small ball because you can get to loose balls. You're quick. You're fast. It's just the right personnel out there. And for whatever reason, that group of players has not been good enough, no matter what iteration we've seen in this era. And that's something Sean Marks is going to have to address this summer, assuming he's the one making the moves. Gross Pipo 20 says Trey is inefficient, a locker room headache, and does not play defense. We are looking for undervalued two-way players like Jaylen Brown. I don't think Jaylen Brown is undervalued, but I would welcome Jaylen Brown with open arms. I also think that's a little bit unfair to Trae Young, who did, lead a team as the best player to playoff series wins, and is fits like a glove the exact need that the Nets have. I'm not saying there aren't issues with him at all. He's a perfect player, but perfect.
You do
is
have
the
to
enemy
sacrifice
of good.
somewhere, right? There is no there unless you're getting prime LeBron or prime Giannis hitting threes. There's never going to be a perfect superstar that you can plug and play without losing major pieces. You're always going to make sacrifices. Every team is going to have weaknesses. That's why the NBA is interesting. I think Trae Young is one of those players too, where he brings definite weaknesses. But with the way the Nets are constructed, it does feel as if, the ability that we have to play defense with our wing players, and Mikal Bridges isn't going anywhere and his defense isn't going anywhere, we will be able to make up for some of those deficiencies. But that is just speculation at this point.
And again, Bridges is getting reps dealing with double teams. Cam Johnson is getting reps, with an expanded role. D-Rock, another premium chat. Draymond is a Hall of Fame player. They have Looney too. I'm not saying they shouldn't address size in any way, shape, or form, but you can't just write off. I mean, small ball has been effective for a lot of these teams over the recent years. I mean, the Miami Heat were probably the first example at one point when they went with Chris Bosh at the 5, back when that wasn't, a popular sort of thing to do. So I do think those lineups can work. You just need guys who are getting to the loose balls. The problem, you have a perfect example. Joe Harris. There's a play last night. There's a loose ball he should have got. He doesn't get. Instead, he fouls them. They get 2 free throws. If Joe Harris is PJ Tucker on that play, the Nets have the ball. And PJ Tucker isn't a big man, but if Joe Harris is PJ Tucker, the Nets have the ball and they're going the other way. It'll be interesting to see the adjustments Jacque Vaughn makes. If any, he seemed happy with the game plan. We'll see if he gives Cam Thomas a look. We'll see if he gives Edmund Sumner a look, Yuta Watanabe a look, if he leans into the small ball even more, even earlier in the game, even from the opening tip. All bets are off. But let's just hope that the Nets can get a win. Again, I'll be in the building in Game 3. And what we'll do is, because Keith is on daddy duty and Hudson, has a job. I do too, but a lot of them. But as far as I will do a quick episode on Friday morning at some point, just fresh off the game, just to give you guys something, and then we'll all hopefully reconvene for the rest of the series, whether it's over for a season-ending episode or whether the series continues, which would be a good thing, as of course we're all pulling for the Nets. Hudson, anything else to add?
Let's just have fun with it. Not for nothing. Last game we lost, but it was fun for a lot of it. We had fight for a lot of it. I let my expectations and my hopes get too high. Let's just have fun with it. Let's just keep these games close, keep them interesting, because if these are the last 2 games of Brooklyn Nets basketball for this season, I want to at least go out with some sort of a bang, not a whimper, right?
Let's just get one. Let's get one, baby. Just win one. Let that be the mantra for now, and we can go from there. But like I said, I'm disappointed they lost that game, but I'm not mad. I can't really be mad at the effort. Let me see if I can do this to take us home. Let's go Nets. Let's go Nets. Brooklyn.